Hello, everybody. I am open to week 3, where we will be covering Chapter 2, Biological Psychology. So, this is just an overview of the week, some things to note and to be paying attention to. You should very first off, the bat, be looking over the objectives for Chapter 2. And listening to the podcast that I do that goes over those objectives. So here's the objectives for Chapter 2. I haven't put it in yet, but you'll see the podcast right below here as an attachment that you can click on. And basically, I walk you through each of these, noting important elements. It's sort of like a mini lecture, but in digestible bites. Walking you through what to expect and what to be focusing on. So it's really helpful that you listen to that first and you go over these objectives first, and then you can go ahead and dive in. Next step would be to look at the lecture slides, which I've posted here for Chapter 2. And then you can read Chapter 2. Another good piece of advice would be if many of you have the e-text, you can listen to the audio of the chapter on Revel. Okay, so Revel offers that option. So for some of you who are auditory learners, this is a great tool to be using. Some of you like to actually listen to it while you're reading it also. So visually and auditory works really good. Okay, so please do that. And then you're going to be reading your first Hawk reading, which is Hawk 1.2. It's called More Experience Equals Bigger Brain. And this discussion question this reading along with Chapter 2 is tied to your discussion question for this week. Okay, so you want to make sure that you read both of those thoroughly, maybe once or twice, 3 times a charm, before you dive in to anything related to the discussion for the week. So I've also posted a PDF of Chapter 2 and a PDF of the Hawk reading, just in case some of you have had some really big issues getting your textbooks on time. You have those here so that you can get started with the readings, and then hopefully for next week you're good to go. Now I'm kind of cutting corners here. Could get into trouble, copyright issues by posting these PDFs for you. So this is it. So you got to have your books to do the rest of the course that you are registered for. After you've done the readings, then it would be great to watch the videos. Sometimes some students like to watch the videos first as an overview, but that can be overwhelming sometimes. So I always say read first and then watch the videos, because then in the videos you're going to catch a lot of stuff that you remember from the reading, and it's going to make a little more sense. They're visual, especially with Chapter 2, which is all, the body, neurons, neural transmission, and having the pictures and the video is super helpful in seeing what's happening. You can pause these, you can go back, you can watch them as many times as you like, but it's really helpful in seeing what is happening. So I've posted 2 videos. These are the Crash Course in Psychology videos. I like them because they're succinct and they cover a lot of good detail. So I've got 2 for you that have to do with the brain. This one's more specifically on neural transmission and brain processes, and this one is more on parts of the brain, what each is responsible for, mechanisms, and that kind of thing. So once you've done the readings and you've looked at the lecture slides and you've watched the videos, then you're going to be ready for your discussion in week 3, which has to do with the Hawk reading. Okay, so this is the first discussion tied to the readings. Last week it was more of a general, maybe it had to do with the preface of the book, but it was more general ethics in psychology, and now we're getting into some meat of some topics. So You're going to be talking about what the research question was in the Hawk reading. So Rosenzweig's hypotheses pertaining to how a rat's brain develops and how that has to do with the environment that the rat is in. Was the researcher's hypothesis supported or not? If you're having trouble understanding what is a hypothesis, then that is a good time to go back and look in chapter 1, where we covered research methodology and we talked about hypotheses. He did an experimental study here, so try to test yourselves. You do have an exam this week on chapters 1 and 2. Try to test yourselves to see what was his experiment. What did he do? What were the parts of the experiment? What made it an experiment? That's not in the discussion question, but those are some questions you should be coming up with as you're reading. How did he operationally define his experiment? Was there a control group? What kind of design was it, right? What were the different variables in his design? So those are all really great kind of thinking questions that you can take on in reading that Hawk book. Now, please remember that Hawk is not the author of the study. Okay, Hawk is simply kind of like an editor. He's putting together 40 of the most important studies in psychology, but those 40 studies were done by other people, right? Because they're all throughout history. This study that you're reading about was done by Rosenzweig. So it's Rosenzweig's research. It's his study. Hawk is merely discussing it, talking about it, and drawing some connections for you, the reader. Okay, so make sure that you're referencing that correctly. If you're going to cite something from the reading, if it's something that Hawk is commenting on, then you're going to cite it as Hawk, right? If you're commenting on Rosenzweig's original research, you'll want to cite that. And at the beginning of every Hawk reading is the original research reference citation. So if you look at right underneath the title to every reading, you're going to see how this was originally published. Rosenzweig and the year and the journal it was published in, and the page numbers and the title and all that good stuff, okay? So I just really want you getting in the habit of citing correctly. You should be. Tie in as many elements as you can into your discussion post. So as you're answering these 2 questions, tie in some of the reading from the Cicerelli and White book, where you covered chapter 2 and you covered biological psychology. I pick these Hawk readings because they mimic what you're learning in the main textbook. So show me how you're integrating and bridging some of those concepts, how you're making those connections. That's what's going to get you the 25 out of 25 post. You should be doing that in your original post where you answer these questions, and you should be doing it in your responses to other people's posts, right? So when you comment on another peer's post, you want to tie in material, give examples, use concepts, use definitions you've learned. All of that's good stuff, okay? That's going to make for a more thorough posting that hits on all the key elements that you need it to hit on, okay? And I talk about that here in your rubric for discussion posts, but I think this week especially it's most important because we're really diving in here. So if you need to look at that rubric again, please do. Some weeks I might have feedback for you on your posts. Some weeks I might not. Some weeks I might just give you a grade. And you can look at that grade and look at the rubric and kind of determine, well, here's why I got this grade. I had X, Y, and Z elements, or I was missing X, Y, and Z elements, or what have you. If you're having trouble citing things as you're using information from the readings, check the Cite as you write document. It's posted in the Start Here menu, and it's to help you in using your citations properly. Okay, so that's it for the discussion. You have a quiz this week on Chapter 2, 10-question quiz on Chapter 2. I would attempt this when you're very comfortable with the material from Chapter 2. Maybe after you've done the Revel practice quizzes would be a good time for that. And this quiz is due Friday. Your exam is not till Sunday. So use your time wisely in between. I would wait till you feel completely ready to take exam 1. Give yourself time to study. The material covered is from Chapter 1 and 2. And so you want to give yourself enough time to study, do the practice tests, go over the objectives for each chapter. Make sure you can answer all of these questions without looking at your notes, okay? If you're getting stuck and you can't answer these questions without looking them up in your book or your notes, then you know you're not ready for the test, okay? Because on the test, you're not going to have time to do that. I mean, this is honor system. I don't know if you're using your book on a test, right? When you're taking a test online, you could very well do that. But I do know that if you're trying to look answers up in your book while you're taking this test, you're going to run out of time because you only have 30 minutes and it's 30 questions. So it's meant to be a little challenging. If you know the stuff and you've memorized parts of the brain and you know neurotransmitters and you know your definitions and your concepts and how it all relates, you're going to be able to speed through a lot of the questions and have no problem. But if you're not solid on those, you're going to have a little more trouble. All right. So that's that. If you haven't yet finished the mandatory intro psych assessment, you need to do that by Friday. Otherwise, it's a 10-point grade deduction. Okay, this needs to be filled out. Every student taking intro psych needs to do it. It doesn't relate to your grade unless you don't do it. Okay, so how you do on the test, I could care less. I just want you to do it. I mean, I want you to try to answer the questions honestly, but your score, you won't really have a score, essentially, because it won't matter for the class. But if you don't do it, you will have a grade point deduction. Okay, I hope that all made sense. It's a lot of material, which is why these podcasts are really important to listen to. You can listen to them once, twice, 3 times, however many times until you are comfortable with the material for the week. But it's a good check to just make sure you're not missing anything and you're getting everything in there, and that you're doing it in the order that makes most sense to help you for learning and retention and all of that good stuff. So if at any point you have a question this week, please contact me. My office hours have changed. I had to change my schedule around slightly. And so my office hours are now 2 to 3:30 on Mondays and Wednesdays. Now, of course, you can email me anytime and I will get back to you within 24 hours. But if you want to Zoom meet, if you want to call meet, I've set aside those Mondays and Wednesdays from 2 to 3:30 to do that. If you need further explanation on a concept, you're not understanding something, a video didn't make sense, whatever it might be, and you need more help, please let me know. I can always do an additional podcast and post it, or I can just chat with you one-on-one, answer questions, whatever you need. Okay, I hope everybody has a great week 3. Thanks, everyone.